everyone, Shirley here. The federal government is increasing its control of information handled by contractors and suppliers and increasing the number of contracts that require security and facility clearances. These are two big topics of interest to the small GovCon community. Today's discussion will scratch the surface on these matters from a strategic perspective. Do you need to get CMMC certified, and should you consider pursuing a facilities clearance to perform classified work? To help me answer these and other related questions, I reached out to Toby Musser, CEO of M&S Group, and Craig Marino, COO of the Squadron Defense Group. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Shirley.
Good morning, Shirley.
Good morning. So let's start with introductions and then we'll dive into our discussion. Craig, let's start with you. Tell our audience a little about yourself and Squadron Defense.
Well, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, and after moving around the country a bit, I landed back in Northern Virginia, where I live with my wife and my daughter. And we lived directly across the street from my brother and directly next door to one of my sisters. So we've got a nice little enclave here. I've been a technical salesman, an M&A advisor for technology companies, and through a random sequence of events, wound up working for the New York Mets for a dozen years. I've now been with Squadron for 10 years, where I'm primarily responsible for our sales, marketing, and service delivery functions. Squadron Defense supports businesses that are working on classified contracts or are interested in doing so. We provide facility security officer consulting services to assist companies through that facility clearance process, and then we help them stand up and operate security programs, including the maintenance of their personal clearances. We also have a business unit that manufactures sensitive compartmented information facilities, or SCIFs, for government agencies and contractors, and also provides consulting services for the construction of SCIFs.
And you, Toby?
Craig and I certainly have some parallels. I've been in the D.C. area most of my life, where I live with my wife and younger children, and my mother-in-law lives across the street, and my oldest son and grandchildren live next door. My background is in technology and engineering, starting out in the medical device space, digital radiography, medical compliance, and then onto the internet, where I was involved in one of the first LMS, or learning management systems, that complied with the DoD's SCORM standards. Fast forward to today, and I lead M&S Group, a managed service provider, as well as ISO and CMMC assessment organization called a C3PAO. Simply put, we help assess compliance for the DoD and provide design, implementation, and ongoing support to government contractors for their IT or technology needs.
And Toby, while you had the floor, please briefly explain what CMMC is and how does it apply to government contracts?
CMMC stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. This is not a new standard or an additional requirement per se. It's an assessment process to ensure that contractors are complying with all the existing contract clauses related to cybersecurity. The CMMC standards in the final steps of being enforced. The rule's about 150 pages at this point, which is one of the larger rules ever published, and will be required by federal law to come into effect between now and next June.
150 pages, that's a little daunting.
Yeah.
Craig, I want you to weigh in here because some contractors are confused, thinking that CMMC only applies if they're working on classified contracts. Can you help us distinguish that?
Sure, it's really a common misunderstanding, but the fact is any contractor working as a prime or as a subcontractor on a DoD contract, regardless of whether or not it's classified, is already supposed to be adhering to the NIST 800-171 standards and is going to be required to meet the relevant CMMC standard. And it's worth adding, more and more agencies are adopting CMMC requirements for their contractors. It's not going to be just a Defense Department thing.
Good, and I thank you for that clarification also. We're going to come back to this in a moment to talk more about clearances, but back to you, Toby. What do contractors need to do to prepare for CMMC certification?
Well, Shirley, it's important to note that the government believes it's already paid contractors to do these things. They've been in the contract since 2017. So you should have your documents, your evidence, they call it your evidence artifacts, collected in one location so that you're ready to have your assessment.
Now, Toby, I've heard it referred to as an audit. Is that correct?
Well, Shirley, the word audit really captures what it is in most people's minds. However, officially it's called an assessment.
Okay, thank you for that. Please describe for our audience what an assessment entails.
An assessment for a single location currently looks like it will take between 180 and 250 hours. The assessors will review all 110 controls in the NIST 800-171 standard. So in reality, there's 300 assessment objectives that are reviewed. The assessor will look for evidence, which is called artifacts in the official guide, such as log files or policies, observe people doing things, interviews with your employees, all to demonstrate your company's way of implementing each of these objectives, verifying your adherence to the contract clauses. After the assessment's complete, with all objectives met, a certificate will be issued that's good for 36 months.
Does your IT or service provider need a clearance in order to service a government contractor's computers?
Generally, the answer is no.
And Craig, what is your take on that? Do you want to clarify?
Well, I think it's important first to distinguish between a facility clearance and a personnel clearance. Any company that is going to work on a classified contract must have a facility clearance, which essentially means that the company has successfully gone through a corporate background check. Personnel clearances are what's required for individuals that have a contractual need to handle classified information in some form. So unless a government contractor's computers are storing or processing classified information, the IT service provider and its staff do not need to be cleared.
Thank you for that clarification. Toby, explain what a C3PAO is and when should GovCons reach out to one?
Surely, a C3PO is a third-party assessment organization authorized by the Cyber AB under the DoD CIO to assess your compliance with the DFARS clauses related to cybersecurity. There are 3 CMMC levels. Level 1 allows you to self-attest, but for Level 2 or 3, you will be required to be assessed by a C3PAO. You should be obtaining quotes and securing your place in line now. With less than 50 assessment organizations out there and the requirement for a certificate in order to get paid on existing contracts and or win new ones, there's going to be a lot of companies in line.
So don't delay. Now's the time to act. So, Toby, how long does it take for a company to prepare for, then obtain a CMMC certification?
Well, Shirley, if you have not been doing all the things in the NIST 800-171 standard, it could take 18 months to implement and document all the aspects. Assessors are going to be looking for muscle memory in the organization's assess. This is not a check-the-box assessment. You can't get that in a couple months. If you have been working on it as part of your normal contract compliance efforts, you may be ready now with minimal effort.
So, Craig, over to you. If a company is already doing work on a DoD contract and would like to do classified work, previously all the work was unclassified, can they just submit a request to have the business cleared?
No, unfortunately, that's not the way it works. For a company to be considered for a facility clearance, it first must be sponsored by either a U.S. government agency or by a prime contractor that's already performing classified work. Sponsorship involves having that end customer agency or the prime contractor submitting a request to the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, or DCSA. And that submission explains the role that the company is going to play on a classified contract and how its staff will be required to come in contact with classified information as part of their work. After an initial review of that facility clearance request, DCSA will reach out to the company and ask it to submit an assortment of corporate documentation that is meant to provide additional clarity regarding the ownership, control, and potential outside influences on the company. Key members of the company will have to be issued personnel clearances before the facility clearance is awarded. And under normal circumstances, the facility clearance process takes 1 to 2 business quarters from the time that sponsorship is submitted. However, if it's determined that foreign ownership, control, or influence, otherwise known as foci, if it's determined that foci exist, then the facility clearance process can actually extend to a year and beyond.
So, Craig, if a member of your firm had a security clearance when they served in the military, does that mean that they can now work on classified programs?
Not necessarily. If an individual's personal security clearance has been inactive for an extended period, they may need to go through the personal clearance process again. If their personal clearance is still active, then they have the ability to be read on and work on classified contracts up to the security level of their personal clearance, confidential, secret, top secret SCI, etc. If a company already has its facility clearance, its cleared personnel can work directly on their classified contracts and subcontracts. However, if the company doesn't have a facility clearance, its cleared staff can only work as an independent contractor, a 1099, on another company's classified contract. These days, personal clearances are taking about a month or so once the individual submits the necessary application, which is called an SF-86, and related supporting material to DCSA.
Thank you for that clarification. We need to take a break. I'm talking to Toby Musser, CEO of M&S Group, and Craig Marino, COO of the Squadron Defense Group, about CMMC certification and security clearances as a way to distinguish your company in the federal marketplace. When we come back, we'll talk about getting help from the right people and maintaining certifications and clearances. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This Growthmasters Federal presentation is hosted by Shirley Collier, President and founder of Scale to Market. Scale to Market helps businesses think, plan, collaborate, and build market value by developing and executing customized, data-driven business development playbooks, building efficient information systems, and creating high-performing BD teams. Utilizing the proprietary Davy Business Development Growth Framework, Scale to Market partners with business owners and executives to increase their company's value by achieving profitable and sustainable growth in the federal marketplace. Email Shirley at scollier@scaletomarket.com to learn more about the Davy Growth Framework and how it can be instrumental in helping grow your federal contracting business. Back now to Shirley's conversation with Toby Musser, CEO of M&S Group, and Craig Marino, COO of Squadron Defense Group, organizations at the forefront of helping GovCons obtain and maintain facility and personnel security clearances, as they discuss the evolving requirements and regulations governing contractors' responsibilities for CMMC and security in contracting for the federal government.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about obtaining CMMC certification and security clearances. Now let's talk about how to keep and leverage those designations to help your company grow. Toby, your company not only helps companies become CMMC certified, but you are an MSP and IT service provider. Are there any regulations that apply to MSP or IT providers that GovCon should know about when selecting them to support the delivery of contract requirements?
Surely all service providers that serve a government contractor need to have a shared responsibility matrix, or an SRM, so that during the assessment, the assessor understands clearly what things you as an organization seeking certification are responsible for, what things are shared between you and your MSP, and which things the MSP is responsible for.
So, Toby, what else do companies need to do in order to maintain their CMMC certification?
Well, to maintain the certification, you have to ensure that the policies, processes, and procedures outlined in NIST 800-171 and additional requirements such as those under the DFAR 7012 clauses C through G are all understood and followed as part of your organization's culture, and not just a pencil-whipped checkbox in a SharePoint folder somewhere. This assessment requirement is really about doing the things to protect your business and our country.
I'm glad you emphasized that, Toby. Too many times contractors roll their eyes and see things like CMMC as just another paperwork hoop they have to jump through for the government, but this one is different. So, Craig, what is involved in maintaining a facility clearance after a business has one?
Once a company's been approved for a facility clearance, it has to establish and operate a security program that's compliant with what's known as 32 CFR Part 117, or the NISPOM, the National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual. And this requirement has several components to it, most of which are the responsibility of the designated facility security officer and insider threat senior program official. It's worth noting that one person can hold both of those positions. But these responsibilities include completing specific security training as the FSO and the ITPSO, creating security policies and procedures for handling classified information and controlled unclassified information, developing and delivering security awareness training for all new hires and existing staff, managing the personnel clearances of the company staff, including initial PCL submissions, incident reports, foreign travel, visit requests for classified meetings at other facilities, managing the documentation associated with the company's facility clearance and the personnel clearances of its cleared staff, conducting security self-inspections and prepare for security reviews that will be conducted by DCSA, and ensuring that the company's IT systems and the policies regarding how they are accessed and operated meet the requirements spelled out in NIST 800-171 and CMMC.
That's quite a bit, and I know that there are many additional details that we don't have time to discuss today. Can you give us an idea of how much it costs for a small business to obtain and maintain a facility clearance?
It's a common question, Shirley, but it's a challenging one, too, because there are so many variables that impact the facility clearance process and the maintenance of the facility clearance. But for small businesses without any requirement to safeguard classified information or stemming from foreign ownership, our experience is that going through the facility clearance process should cost less than $10,000 and frequently much less. It's worth adding that once a company has its facility clearance, the cost to the company for getting one of its staff members cleared is zero. The government actually covers that cost. As for maintaining a facility clearance, that cost variance is just way too broad to offer up a single answer or even a range. But a meaningful portion of it is going to involve the maintenance of the company's IT security system posture.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the same question to you, Toby. How much should a small business budget to obtain and maintain a CMMC certification, and how does the government underwrite, if it does at all, any of these expenses?
Yeah, it's a great question, Shirley. It's the question everybody wants an answer to. So the government believes that you've been doing all these things required to be assessed under CMMC, as these clauses have been in your contracts for over 5 years. As such, in a recent meeting with the DoD directly, there is no plan for any additional funding, grants, or tax breaks for any part of this compliance, as the CMMC is an assessment standard verifying that you're doing what you've already said. As far as the cost to implement and comply, it's not really possible to give an accurate idea of the cost of compliance, as each organization is different. The really useful information I can share is that if assessments and the assessment guide end up being published in substantially the same form as they are now, a single location company is looking at $35,000 to $50,000 every 3 years to maintain the certification status from an assessor organization called a C3PAO. If you finance this, it could be in the $1,500 a month range.
Thank you for that clarification. This is a question that I hear quite frequently. I want to summarize what we have discussed today. The Department of Defense and soon all federal agencies will require their contractors to obtain a CMMC certification. It's been a long time coming, as Toby has indicated. We've been warned for years. There is now the infrastructure in the market with companies like Toby's to help small businesses become compliant and keep and win new contracts. And on the facilities clearance side of the equation, there are huge opportunities to make a difference to serve the American people. But obtaining and keeping clearances require an investment in resources, people, capital, and facilities. And this is where Craig and his company, Squadron Defense Group, can help. They have the knowledge, people, and equipment to help small businesses win and execute on cleared work. So the final question to each of you is why? Why should or must small contractors obtain and maintain CMMC and security clearances? Toby, you want to go first?
Thank you, Shirley. I really appreciate this opportunity to get some good information out there. The CMMC assessment process is required under the law, whether it is in your new or renewed contract this September or next September. The contract officer will not legally be able to renew your contract or authorize payments to you without the certificate. So time is of the essence, as there are very few companies that can get the certificate process completed for you. Don't be at the end of the line and risk losing your ability to maintain and win contracts.
Thank you for emphasizing that. And Craig, you'll have the last say.
There's a significant responsibility that comes with the opportunity to do work for our government agencies, particularly those that are involved in our nation's defense. If a company decides to pursue this kind of work, they have an obligation to address matters of security with a commitment that extends well beyond check-the-box compliance.
I agree. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights with our audience today.
Shirley, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Shirley.
It's been great for me as well. Folks, if you would like to get in touch with Toby Musser, he can be reached at toby@mnsgroup.com or at 410-838-1088. And if you want to get in touch with Craig Marino, he can be reached at cmarino, that's M-A-R-I-N-O, at squadrondefense.com. And his number is 571-203-0245, extension 2229. Or you can reach out to us here at Scale to Market, and we'll make sure you're connected. This is Shirley Collier, President of Scale to Market and host of the Growth Masters Federal Podcast, signing off for now. As we close, I want to thank you for joining us today and encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn and visit our website, that's scaletomarket.com with the number 2 in the middle, where you will find our library of podcasts, webcasts, white papers, my blog, and other links and resources. While there, please leave us a comment or suggestion so we can stay focused on what's important to you. We'll see you next time.